It was a quiet Monday morning in a sleepy little town, just outside the city. The birds sang softly. The streets were still damp from last night's gentle rain, and everything seemed peaceful. But something strange was about to happen in a place. Most people forgot a worn-out public park near the edge of town. An old wooden bench stood under a giant oak tree, its branches swaying gently in the wind. Leaves danced across the cracked pavement of the walking path, and on that bench sat Keanu Reeves. He was dressed in a plain gray hoodie and faded jeans, a paper cup of coffee in his hand, and a backpack resting at his feet. He had a beard now. His hair had grown longer. He looked nothing like the Hollywood star people once knew. Nobody in town knew who he really was, to them. He was just a quiet man who moved into a tiny rented house on Oak Street a few months ago. He rarely spoke. He smiled politely to neighbors. And every morning, just after sunrise, he walked to the same bench and watched the world wake up. But this morning would be different, because a little girl had started following him. She was about 6 or 7 years old, thin, with short brown hair and wide eyes. She wore the same pink dress every day and carried a stuffed rabbit with a missing ear. She didn't speak, not a word, no sounds, not even laughter. She only stared. Every day for the last 2 weeks, Keanu had seen her from a distance, sometimes sitting on the swings, sometimes hiding behind the trees. She never approached, never came close, just watched. He had begun to wonder if she was real. But today, as the sun rose and cast a golden glow over the park, she did something she had never done before. She walked straight up to him. Her steps were slow and careful, like she was afraid he might disappear. Keanu looked up from his coffee, surprised, but didn't speak. He just smiled, warm and gentle. She stood silently in front of him, clutching the stuffed rabbit tightly. He pointed to the bench beside him, silently asking if she wanted to sit. She nodded once, then slowly climbed up beside him. They sat together in silence for a long time. The air was filled with the soft rustling of leaves and the distant sound of cars on the highway. Keanu didn't ask questions. He didn't pressure her to speak. He just sat there, sipping his coffee, offering her quiet company. Finally, she reached into her dress pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. It was crumpled and had been opened many times. She handed it to him with shaking hands. He unfolded it carefully. It was a drawing. Stick figures, a little girl standing next to a tall man with long hair. Both were smiling, and below it, written in a shaky hand, were the words, "Thank you for not being afraid of me." Keanu felt something tighten in his chest. He looked at her, eyes soft. She pointed at the man in the drawing, then at him. He nodded slowly. She smiled for the first time. And in the distance, behind a bush, a woman wiped tears from her eyes. Her name was Emily. She was the girl's mother, and she had been watching every day. She hadn't planned to let him see her. She had just followed her daughter one morning, worried. But what she saw shocked her. The stranger, the quiet man nobody knew, was the first person her daughter had chosen to be near. And now, for the first time in 2 years, her daughter was smiling. Emily covered her mouth with her hand, heart pounding. She remembered the accident. 2 years ago, they had lost everything. Her husband had died in a car crash. Her daughter, Mia, had been in the back seat. She survived but stopped speaking that day. Doctors called it selective mutism, trauma-induced. Silence. Nothing had worked. Not therapy, not medication, not school counselors. She had become a ghost in her own world. Until now, Emily kept watching as Mia gently leaned against Keanu's arm. He didn't flinch. Instead, he slowly handed her the coffee cup. She held it with both hands, sniffed it, then smiled again. Emily felt her knees go weak. She sat down on the grass, hiding behind the bush, tears streaming down her face. Something was happening. Something real. The next day, Keanu returned to the park with 2 cups of coffee, one black, one sweet with milk. He sat down on the same bench and waited. She came again, this time running. She took the sweet cup, sipped it carefully, and nodded in approval. Keanu smiled. He pulled a deck of cards from his backpack. They played silently. Every movement was slow and careful, as if both were afraid to break the moment. Keanu laid down a joker and made a funny face. Mia giggled. And in the distance, Emily watched again. Every morning, for the next 5 days, the same thing happened. Mia would run to Keanu. They would sit. They would play. Sometimes they drew pictures. Sometimes they just watched the sky. And every day, Emily cried quietly behind the trees, unsure what to do. Then came the moment that would change everything. It was Friday. The sun was hidden behind clouds, and a cold wind blew across the park. Keanu sat alone again, holding to cups. Mia didn't come. An hour passed. Then two. He looked around, concerned. His face grew tense. He stood up, walked to the swings, then to the trees, searching. Nothing. Finally, he sat back down, a deep worry in his eyes. Behind the bush, Emily stepped out. She walked up to him slowly, trembling. He looked at her in surprise. She had dark circles under her eyes and worry written across her face. "She's sick," Emily said softly. It was the first time they had spoken. Keanu stood up immediately. "Is she okay?" Emily nodded, then looked away. "She's asking for you." Keanu froze. He whispered. "She whispered your name this morning," Emily said, tears in her eyes. "I don't know how or why, but she said Keanu." His face crumbled. He looked down, overwhelmed. Then he looked up at Emily and said quietly, "May I come?" The house was small, walls covered in family pictures. Most had the same 3 faces: Emily, her husband, and little Mia. Keanu stepped inside slowly, looking around with silent respect. He saw the hospital bed in the living room, set up beside the fireplace. Mia lay there, pale and quiet, but when she saw him, her eyes lit up. She tried to sit up, but he rushed to her side and gently helped her. He sat beside her and took her hand. She squeezed it. Then, slowly, she opened her mouth and whispered, "Thank you." Keanu closed his eyes. Emily stood behind him, hands shaking. He turned to her and said softly, "I don't know why she chose me," Emily whispered. "Because you didn't try to fix her. You just accepted her." They sat together as the evening fell. And for the first time in 2 years, the house was filled with warmth. Not from the fireplace, but from hope. That night, after Keanu left, Emily watched her daughter sleep with a peaceful expression she hadn't seen in years. She opened her laptop. Typed his name, and when she saw the results, her hands began to shake again. She read headline after headline. Keanu Reeves gives away millions to help sick children. Keanu Reeves quietly supports orphanage with anonymous donations. Keanu Reeves helps strangers stranded on highway. She stared at the screen. Then whispered to herself, "Who are you, really?" But Keanu had no idea she knew. And the next morning, he would return to the bench like nothing had changed, only this time, everything had. Asterisk. The morning sun broke through the clouds as birds sang their soft songs again. Keanu Reeves sat on the same bench under the old oak tree, wearing the same hoodie, holding the same cup of coffee, but something inside him had changed. Yesterday, he heard Mia speak. Just one word, but to him, it felt like the whole world had opened up. He looked at the second coffee cup beside him, the one meant for her, and waited. He didn't know if she would come. But then, through the trees, he saw her. She was walking slowly, holding her mother's hand. Emily smiled shyly at Keanu as they reached the bench. Keanu stood up and gave a small respectful nod. Mia let go of her mother's hand and walked forward, her stuffed rabbit hanging from her other hand. She climbed onto the bench beside him, like she had done so many times before. She picked up the sweet coffee and sipped it, then looked at him. And softly said, "Hi." Keanu froze for a second. Then he smiled, the kind of smile that comes from deep inside, the kind that hurts a little because it means so much. "Hi," he whispered back. Emily wiped her eyes behind them. From that day on, everything changed. Mia began to speak more, but only around Keanu. Just a few words at first. She would say thank you or card please or draw. He never pushed her, never asked questions, never praised her too much. He just listened. Every word she said felt like a miracle, but he made it feel normal. And maybe that's why she kept going. Emily started joining them more often, sitting quietly on the grass nearby, watching their connection grow. She couldn't believe the change, not just in Mia but in herself. For 2 years, she had lived in fear. Fear of losing her daughter completely. Fear of being alone forever. But now, there was something new in her heart, something she hadn't felt since her husband died. Hope. One rainy afternoon, Keanu knocked on their door. Emily opened it, surprised. He held up a small umbrella and a white box. Muffins, he said. Thought Mia might want to bake together. Emily smiled. She loves baking. Me too, he replied. They stepped into the kitchen. Mia was already waiting on a stool, apron around her neck. She saw the box, and her eyes lit up. Chocolate? She asked. Keanu nodded. Triple chocolate. Mia clapped once and giggled. Emily stood by the counter, watching as Keanu carefully measured flour, letting Mia pour it into the bowl. They worked in silence, but not the sad kind of silence. This one was full of peace. Emily leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, a soft smile on her face. For the first time in years, her kitchen felt like a home again. When the muffins were in the oven, Mia looked up and said, "Can we make them for the shelter too?" Keanu blinked. "What shelter?" Emily answered. "There's a women's shelter downtown. We used to volunteer there before the accident." Mia nodded. "I want to go again." Keanu looked at Emily. Emily looked at Mia. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. A bridge was being rebuilt. 2 weeks later, the three of them stood inside the shelter kitchen. Trays of fresh muffins laid out in front of them. Women and children lined up with smiles on their faces. Mia handed out the muffins carefully, saying "Enjoy" or "You're welcome" to each person. Keanu watched from the side, his heart full. Emily stood beside him, wiping her hands on a towel. "I don't know how you did it," she whispered. He shook his head. "I didn't. She did." "No." Emily said. "You were the first person she trusted again." Keanu looked down. "Sometimes, all someone needs is to be seen." Emily stared at him. "What do you mean?" she asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he looked up at her and said softly, "When my sister got sick, no one really saw her. They saw her illness, her weakness. They treated her like she was broken." He paused. "I promised myself I would never treat anyone like that again." Emily felt a wave of emotion rise in her chest. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could say anything, Mia ran over. "We're out," she said proudly. Keanu smiled. "You did great. Can we come again?" Mia asked. Emily placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Of course," she said. And in that simple moment, 3 lives continued to heal. A few days later, the town started whispering. Someone had recognized Keanu. A man at the gas station. He saw the beard, the eyes, the quiet way he carried himself. And the rumors began. "I think that's Keanu Reeves." "No way. What would he be doing here?" "I swear it's him. My cousin met him once in L.A." Emily heard the whispers. At first, she didn't believe them. Then one night, while cleaning the kitchen, she found a photo tucked behind the fridge. Mia had drawn it. A picture of her, Keanu, and a giant movie screen. She had written, "You're my favorite actor." Emily sat down at the table, heart racing. He knew she knew, but he never said anything. He never used his fame, never acted special. He just showed up, again and again. Kind, patient, present. A man who had every reason to disappear from the world, but chose instead to quietly help others find their way back. One evening, as the sun set over the town, Keanu and Emily sat on the front porch. Mia was asleep inside, curled up with her rabbit. The porch light flickered softly. Emily turned to him. "Why here?" she asked. "Why this town?" Keanu stared into the trees for a moment, then replied, "Because no one here asked for anything." Emily tilted her head. He smiled gently. "In most places, people want autographs, selfies, attention. Here, I was just the quiet guy on the bench. You could be anywhere in the world." She said, "Maybe," he said, "but I think this is where I'm meant to be right now." They sat in silence again, the night wrapping around them like a blanket. And then Emily whispered, "You saved her." Keanu shook his head. "She saved me." And from the window, Mia watched them, her small face resting on the windowsill, her eyes full of peace. But what none of them knew was that someone else had started watching too. A man with a camera, someone who had followed the rumors, someone who had just taken a picture of Keanu on that porch. And that photo would soon change everything. The next morning started like any other. The birds sang. The coffee was warm. Keanu sat on his usual bench with 2 cups, waiting. Mia arrived wearing a yellow hoodie, her rabbit tucked under one arm and a drawing clutched in the other. "For you," she said softly, handing it to him. Keanu unfolded the paper. It was a picture of the 3 of them again: Keanu, Mia, and Emily standing in front of the oak tree. Above it, in big letters, were the words, "Thank you for being my friend." Keanu looked at the drawing for a long time. His hands trembled just slightly. "This means more to me than you know," he whispered. But he didn't know someone else had already taken something from him. Miles away, in a busy newsroom in the city, a man named Brent slammed a photo onto his editor's desk. "I told you," Brent said. "It's him. It's Keanu Reeves, and he's been hiding in plain sight." His editor raised an eyebrow. "What's he doing in that town?" "I don't know," Brent said, lowering his voice. "But he's living like a regular guy. No security, no mansion, nothing." The editor leaned forward. "Get me a story," he said. "Dig into everything. Who he's living with, what he's doing there. I want it by Monday." Brent nodded and grabbed his camera. Back in the small town, Emily was walking through the grocery store when someone stopped her. "Is that really Keanu Reeves living with you?" She froze. "What, Bo? Come on." The woman smiled. "He comes to your house every day. Everyone's talking." Emily forced a polite smile and walked away, heart pounding. Outside, she called Keanu. He answered after 2 rings. "Hey," she said, trying to sound calm. "Did something happen?" "Not that I know of," he said. "Why? People are asking questions about you." There was a pause. Then Keanu said quietly, "I'll come by tonight." When he arrived that evening, Emily could see something in his eyes, something heavy. He sat on the porch and stared into the distance for a long time before speaking. "Years ago," he said, "I tried to disappear." Emily sat beside him in silence. "After my sister died, I gave away most of my money. I sold the houses, gave up the cars, and I left." "Why here?" she asked again. He smiled softly. "Because Mia reminded me of her, of my sister." Emily blinked back tears. "You didn't tell anyone?" "No," he said. "I didn't want to be known anymore. I just wanted to live a life that felt real." Emily looked down at her hands. "Well," she whispered, "you gave us something real too." Just then, Mia opened the door and stepped out holding 3 muffins. She handed one to each of them and sat down between them. "We're a team," she said, smiling. Keanu laughed. "Yes, we are." Emily smiled too, but the peace wouldn't last long. 2 days later, the story broke. The headline read, "Keanu Reeves found living in small town." Under secret identity, photos filled the page. Him at the shelter. Him sitting with Mia on the bench. Him baking in the kitchen. The story went viral in hours. Thousands of comments flooded in. Some praised him. Others demanded to know more. Paparazzi started arriving by the next morning. Cameras followed every corner of the neighborhood. Emily's phone rang non-stop. Keanu disappeared. He didn't return to the bench. He didn't answer calls. Mia sat on the porch every morning, holding her rabbit and the latest drawing she had made. But the bench stayed empty. Emily tried to protect her daughter. She closed the curtains, turned off the news, stopped answering the door. But Mia began to shut down again. She stopped speaking. She stopped drawing. The light in her eyes started to fade. Emily cried at night, cursing the people who exposed their peace. And she cursed herself too for not seeing this coming. But more than anything, she missed him. One evening, as the sky turned red, Mia looked up at her mother and whispered something that broke her heart. "Did he leave because of me?" Emily held her tight. "No," she whispered through tears. "He left to protect you." A week later, a letter arrived at the door. It wasn't in an envelope, just a folded piece of paper taped to their front door. Emily opened it. It read, "I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to hurt you or Mia. I needed to step back to keep you safe. But I'll never forget you. And if you ever need me, I'll be watching." Keanu sat on the porch for hours, holding the note, crying silently. Mia sat beside her, head on her mother's shoulder. "He's not really gone," she whispered. "How do you know?" Emily asked. Mia looked at the trees. "Because the sky still feels safe." What they didn't know was that Keanu hadn't left town. He had simply gone deeper into the forest, renting a small cabin from a local farmer. He watched from afar, through the trees. He saw the news vans come and go. He saw the crowds fade. He saw Mia wait for him, but he stayed hidden, because he knew this was bigger than him now. 3 weeks passed. Life returned to normal. Almost, but something was missing. The laughter, the routine, the feeling of being whole. Emily kept replaying everything in her head. Then one night, she made a decision. She stood in front of a camera. No makeup, no filters, just her and a message. She posted the video online, and within a day, it went viral. In the video, she said, "My name is Emily, and the man you've all been talking about, he saved my daughter's life. Not with money, not with fame, but with kindness." She looked directly into the camera. "You didn't find him. You ruined something pure, and now I'm asking you all to let it go. Please, leave him alone." People listened. Comments poured in, apologies, support, silence. By the end of the week, the cameras were gone, the gossip faded, and the town became quiet again. On a quiet Saturday morning, Mia was walking alone through the park. She wore her yellow hoodie again and clutched her newest drawing, a picture of the old oak tree, with one word written beneath it. "Come back." She sat on the bench, waiting. For hours. The wind rustled the trees. A squirrel jumped onto the path. And then, she heard footsteps. Slow, careful, familiar. She looked up. Keanu stood there. No disguise. No hoodie. Just him. Mia stood. They looked at each other. And then she ran into his arms. He picked her up and held her tightly, eyes closed, breathing in the moment. When they pulled back, Mia said softly, "We missed you." Keanu looked at her and whispered, "I missed you too." Emily stood in the distance, watching them, tears in her eyes. But this time, she didn't hide. She walked forward. Keanu saw her and smiled. Emily didn't say anything. She just hugged him. And, for the first time in weeks, everything felt whole again. But none of them knew. The biggest secret was still waiting to be revealed. And it would come from someone they had never expected. The air felt lighter. For the first time in weeks, the town felt calm again. The news vans were gone. The questions stopped. Neighbors went back to waving politely instead of whispering. But something even more important had returned. Keanu was back. Every morning, he met Mia at the bench under the oak tree. They sipped coffee. They played cards. They drew pictures. She was speaking again. Not just words, but full sentences. She laughed now. She asked questions. And sometimes, she even told stories about her dreams. Keanu listened with quiet joy, his heart slowly healing with every word. Emily joined them more often too. The three of them had created a rhythm that felt natural, peaceful, safe. Keanu stayed at the cabin just outside town, but he was always near. People still recognize him sometimes, but they had changed too. They kept their distance. They let him be. And so, life found a balance, until a letter arrived. It came in a plain envelope, addressed to Emily. No return name. No stamps. Just placed in the mailbox by someone unknown. She opened it at the kitchen table. Inside was a short note, written in sharp, rushed handwriting. "I know who you are, and I know what he did. You both took something from me. I'm coming back. No signature. No explanation. Just those words." Emily stared at the letter, heart thudding in her chest. She reread it 3 times, then folded it up, hands shaking. That evening, she met Keanu on the porch. She handed him the letter without saying a word. He read it in silence. His eyes darkened. "Have you told Mia?" he asked softly. Emily shook her head. "No, I didn't want to scare her." Keanu nodded. "You recognize the handwriting?" she asked. He paused. Double quotes. "No," he said, "but I have a guess." That night, Keanu sat alone in the cabin, staring at an old photograph. It was faded now, edges worn. 4 young men stood side by side, all wearing army uniforms, smiling, arms around each other. He touched the corner of the photo gently. "Chase," he whispered. Then he turned the photo over, On the back were for names: Keanu, Ben, Chase, Ryder. He hadn't said those names in years ago, long before the movies, before the fame. Keanu had served quietly in a military unit overseas. Not many people knew that part of his life. It was short, but intense. And one of those missions had gone terribly wrong. A raid in a remote village. Intel had been bad. Things escalated. Innocent lives were caught in the crossfire. Keanu had tried to stop it. He had pulled his closest friend Chase out of the line of fire, but Chase didn't forgive him, not because of what happened in the mission, but because of what happened after. Keanu testified against their commanding officer. He told the truth. He exposed everything. And Chase lost his career because of it. He blamed Keanu for the fallout. They hadn't spoken since. Until now. The next morning, Keanu didn't go to the bench. He met Emily outside her house before Mia woke up. "I need to tell you something," he said. They sat together on the porch as he explained it all: his time in the unit, the mistake, the truth, the fallout. "And Chase, you think he sent the letter?" Emily asked. "I don't know who else would," Keanu said. He was angry, hurt. "I haven't heard from him in over a decade. What should we do?" Keanu looked at her gently. "We don't panic," he said. "We stay calm. Mia doesn't need to carry this." Emily nodded slowly, trusting him. But someone else had already arrived in town. A man checked into the dusty motel by the highway. He used a fake name, wore sunglasses even at night. He watched, he waited, and he made phone calls from payphones. But he wasn't there to take photos. He was there to confront someone. Days passed without incident. Mia continued to thrive. Keanu smiled more. Emily laughed again. But the feeling in the air changed. Subtle, quiet, like the wind was holding its breath. Keanu felt it. He started watching the streets more carefully. He parked his truck at a different angle each day, and he checked the cabin windows twice each night. One evening, as he walked Mia back from the park, he noticed a man standing at the far end of the road. Tall, still, watching. Keanu said nothing. He just reached for Mia's hand. "Let's walk faster," he said softly. The man followed them to the edge of town, then vanished. But the next morning, Keanu found something on the porch of his cabin. A copy of the same photograph. The one from the army. But this time, there was a red circle around his own face, and one word written below it: "liar." Keanu stared at it for a long time, then folded it up and placed it in the fire. He sat by the flames for hours, thinking. This was no longer just about him. This was about Mia. And Emily. He couldn't run. He had to protect them. That night, he returned to Emily's house. "We need to talk," he said. She saw the look in his eyes. They sat at the kitchen table again. "Just like when the first letter came. He's here," Keanu said. Emily single quotes heart dropped. "Are you sure?" Keanu nodded. "I saw him, and he left me a message." Emily felt her throat tighten. "What does he want?" "Closure," Keanu said. "Or revenge. Maybe both. Will he hurt us?" Keanu looked at her and said firmly, "Not while I'm breathing." The next day, he called someone. An old contact, a friend from those same days in the unit. He explained the situation. The man on the other end of the line said just one thing: "If it's Chase, be careful. He's not the same anymore." 3 nights later, it happened. Emily was putting Mia to bed when the power suddenly went out. The house went black. No lights. No street lamps. Just silence. Then a knock on the door. 3 knocks. Slow, cold, deliberate. Emily froze. She reached for her phone. No signal. Then she remembered Keanu. He had moved into the guest room just 2 nights ago to stay close. She rushed toward the hallway. He was already there, holding a flashlight in one hand and something else in the other. A small black case. "Stay behind me," he whispered. He opened the front door slowly, but no one was there. Just an envelope on the doorstep. Keanu bent down, picked it up, and stepped back inside. He opened it carefully. Inside was a photo of Mia. Taken from a distance. On the back, it read, "This is your final warning. Tell the truth, or I will." Keanu clenched his jaw. "No more hiding," he said. Emily nodded. What are you going to do?" she asked. He looked at her. Eyes calm. Voice steady. "I'm going to end this. But none of them knew that Mia had woken up during the noise, and she was standing at the top of the stairs, holding her rabbit listening. And the next day, she would do something no one expected. The house was quiet the next morning. Too quiet. Emily stood in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a steaming mug of tea, staring at nothing. Her eyes were red from a sleepless night. Keanu paced near the window, watching the road outside. He hadn't slept either. Every sound in the night had kept him alert. Every breeze, every creak, every movement in the dark. But the worst part wasn't what happened. It was the photo. The photo of Mia. And the message written behind it. It wasn't a threat anymore. It was a line drawn in the sand. And Keanu knew this was personal. Emily finally broke the silence. "What now?" she asked. He didn't turn from the window. "He wants to drag me into the open," Keanu said. "He wants to break me in front of everyone." "But why, Mia?" Her voice cracked. Keanu closed his eyes. "Because she's my strength now." Upstairs, Mia was wide awake. She hadn't spoken since the power went out. She hadn't asked questions. She hadn't smiled. But she had listened. She heard everything. The letter, the name Chase. The truth. And now, she sat on the floor of her room, drawing something new. Her rabbit lay beside her, and the picture she was sketching showed 3 stick figures again. But this time, there was a 4th figure. A man standing in the shadows. With red eyes. She wrote something at the bottom in shaky handwriting. "Don't let the shadows win." Then she folded the drawing carefully and slipped it into her backpack. She had made a decision. She wasn't going to be the silent girl anymore. The day passed slowly. Keanu didn't leave the house. Emily stayed near Mia. The entire time, they baked cookies. They watched old cartoons. They tried to pretend everything was okay. But the tension hung in the air like smoke. And when the sun began to set, Keanu walked outside and stood by the old oak tree. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "Please, not her, not the girl." That night, Emily locked every door, every window. Keanu kept his phone charged and a flashlight nearby. But still, sleep didn't come easily. And somewhere, far from town, a man watched the lights go out. His hands gripped the wheel of a rusted car. His breath was steady. His eyes cold. "You think you're safe now," he muttered. "But you forgot what you owe me." He opened the glove box and pulled out a file. Inside were old news clippings, printed photos, and a worn military patch. He stared at Keanu's face, younger, UNSCARED. Then he smiled. "Let's finish what we started." Early the next morning, before the sun rose, Mia did something unthinkable. She snuck out. She packed a few things in her small pink backpack: her rabbit, her drawing, a flashlight, and a single muffin wrapped in a napkin. She opened the back door. Quietly, stepping into the cold morning air, the world was still asleep. She walked through the backyard, through the narrow trail behind the shed, and onto the old path that led toward the woods. Her legs were small, but her steps were steady. She had one goal: find the man who was hurting them and tell him to stop. Keanu woke up an hour later. The light outside was gray. He checked the porch. Empty. He checked the kitchen. No sound. Then he called out, "Mia." No answer. His voice rose, "Mia." Emily ran down the hallway, panic in her eyes. They searched every room. Nothing. The back door was cracked open, and on the kitchen table was a folded drawing. Keanu picked it up. It was the picture she had drawn: the shadow man, and at the bottom, a note: "I'm not afraid anymore. I'm going to fix this." Keanu single quotes. Hands trembled. "No," he whispered. Emily's knees gave out. She collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Keanu grabbed his keys and ran out the door. In the woods, Mia followed the path she remembered from the walk with Keanu weeks ago. The trail led to a small ridge where the trees opened up, and below was the old cabin. She saw smoke rising from the chimney, but she didn't go there. She sat down near a large tree, pulled out her drawing, and placed it on the ground. She knew he was watching. She could feel it. And sure enough, behind the trees, Chase watched her. He wore a black jacket, hood up, a small camera hanging from his neck. He stepped forward slowly, curious. "You're the girl," he said. Mia didn't move. She looked up at him and said softly, "Why are you hurting him?" Chase blinked. "He lied," he said. He betrayed me. He took everything. Mia reached into her backpack and pulled out the muffin. She placed it on the drawing and said, "He saved me." Chase stared. His face twitched. Mia continued, voice quiet but clear. "I couldn't talk. I was broken. But he didn't try to fix me. He just stayed." Her small hand pointed at the drawing. "I drew this because I know you're sad too." Chase looked down at it. For a moment. He didn't speak. Then he crouched slowly, eyes locked on hers. "You think he's a hero?" he whispered. "He's kind," Mia said. "Are you?" That question struck him harder than any bullet. His jaw clenched. "I used to be." Mia picked up the muffin and held it out. "Then be again." Chase stared at her. His fingers trembled. His mind raced with images: gunfire, dust, screaming. Keanu dragging him out of the flames. He had blamed Keanu for so long. But now, here was this little girl, fearless, offering him a muffin and forgiveness in the same breath. He couldn't breathe. He stood up and took a step back. "Go home," he said quietly. Mia nodded, then turned and walked. Keanu arrived minutes later, his truck skidding to a stop near the trees. He jumped out, running through the trail, calling her name, and then, through the fog, he saw her. Walking toward him. Alone. He ran to her and dropped to his knees. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice cracking. She nodded and whispered, "He's sad." Keanu held her tightly. Tears slipped down his face. Emily arrived seconds later, falling to the ground and hugging her daughter. "Don't ever do that again," she sobbed. Mia looked at both of them. "I had to try." And far behind the trees, Chase stood watching. He crushed the photo in his hand, then turned and walked away into the woods, for the first time in years. Not with anger but with something else. Confusion, regret, maybe even healing. That night, the house was filled with candles. The power had returned, but they didn't use it. They sat together on the floor, Keanu, Emily, and me, eating muffins and drinking warm tea. Mia leaned her head on Keanu's shoulder. "Did I do something good?" she asked. Keanu kissed her head gently. "You did something brave." Emily smiled through tears. "You did something that even adults couldn't do." And outside, under the stars, the wind carried away the last of the fear. But just as peace returned, something unexpected happened. A knock at the door. This time, soft, gentle. Keanu opened it. No one was there. Just a single envelope. He picked it up. Inside was a photograph. The original army photo. And on the back, written in neat handwriting, "You told the truth. Now I will too. I'm leaving. Thank you, Mia." No signature. Just silence. Keanu smiled faintly. The storm had passed, but the biggest surprise still waited around the corner. A discovery. Emily was about to make one that would change her understanding of Keanu forever. The town had returned to peace. No more rumors. No more reporters. No more shadows hiding behind trees. Keanu, Emily, and Mia had found a rhythm again. Mornings in the park, afternoons baking, evenings watching old movies. Mia talked freely now, sometimes too much, and no one complained. She had grown into a brighter version of herself, the kind only love and trust could unlock. Emily watched her daughter blossom every day, but deep down, something still stirred inside her. Not fear, not doubt. Just a question. One that had been quietly growing for weeks. Who was Keanu, really? Not the movie star, not the quiet man on the bench. But the man behind all of it. She saw how gently he moved through the world, how he listened more than he spoke. How he carried so much pain, yet gave only peace to others. And she needed to know. One cloudy afternoon, while Keanu and Mia played cards inside, Emily went into the garage. She found an old box labeled files. Inside were school records, photo albums, utility bills, and a small stack of documents from the shelter she used to volunteer at. She pulled out her laptop and searched for something she hadn't dared to look for until now. Keanu Reeves' humanitarian work. Dozens of articles filled the screen. She scrolled through page after page. Stories of secret donations. Children he had helped. Grants he had funded for hospitals. Places he had shown up to quietly, unannounced, just to listen to people's stories. And buried near the bottom of one article, she saw it. Project Aurora, private funding led by anonymous donor K.R. to assist trauma therapy for children with selective mutism. Her heart stopped. She clicked it. The article explained how years ago, a silent donor had funded therapists, resources, and speech specialists across 3 countries. Thousands of children had benefited. Emily stared at the screen, hands trembling. This wasn't just kindness. This was legacy. And he never told anyone, never once mentioned it. But that's not what broke her. What broke her was the date on the donation. 2 weeks after his sister died. Emily closed the laptop and walked outside. The air smelled like rain. Keanu was sitting on the porch with Mia, holding a paper flower she had made for him. He smiled at her, then looked up at Emily. She walked over slowly and sat beside him. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, she whispered, "You knew." He looked at her. "You knew what Mia was going through before she even spoke." Keanu didn't deny it. He just nodded. Double quotes, "How? Because I watched someone I love lose her voice too," he said quietly. "And I couldn't save her. But this time, I could try." Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because it wasn't about me," he said. "It was about her. She did the work. I just sat on the bench." Mia looked up at them, confused. "Are you crying?" she asked. Emily laughed through tears, a little. Keanu reached for her hand and held it gently. And in that moment, Emily realized something else. She had fallen in love with him. Not because he was famous. Not because he had saved her daughter, but because he had done it quietly, without needing praise, without expecting anything in return. The next day, Mia asked a strange question. "Can we visit your sister?" she asked Keanu. He blinked. "What do you mean?" "You told me she's gone," Mia said, "but I want to say thank you to her. Because if she didn't teach you love, maybe I wouldn't have it now." Keanu couldn't speak. Tears filled his eyes. He nodded slowly, and 2 days later, they drove to the old cemetery on the edge of the neighboring town. A simple headstone stood under a flowering tree. It read, "Jennifer Reeves, beloved sister. Your light never faded." Mia placed a paper flower at the base. Emily stood beside Keanu and wrapped her arm around him. No words were said, but in that silence, love bloomed. Weeks passed. Then months. Spring turned into summer. Mia got accepted into a new school with a small classroom and a counselor who had trained through Project Aurora. She flourished. She made friends. She never stopped speaking again. Emily began working at the shelter again, this time as director. And Keanu? He stayed. No more hiding. No more running. He built a life in the small town. He fixed bikes for kids who couldn't afford them. He read books to elderly folks at the library. He helped rebuild the roof on the community center. People knew who he was, but they treated him like one of their own. Because now he was, on a warm Saturday morning, under the old oak tree, Mia set up a small table with cupcakes, drawings, and a handwritten sign. Mia's first thank you day. Emily stood beside her with a tray of cookies, and Keanu leaned against the tree, arms crossed, watching with a proud smile. One by one, townspeople came. They took cupcakes. They shared stories. They thanked Mia for being brave. And before leaving, each one placed a hand-drawn heart on a big poster board that Mia had made. At the center of the board was a photo of her, Keanu, and Emily. With one word written in bright red marker, "Fainulith at night." As the stars came out and fireflies filled the sky, Emily and Keanu sat on the porch, watching Mia fall asleep by the window with her rabbit in her arms. "Do you ever miss the old life?" Emily asked softly. Keanu shook his head. "I used to," he said. "But now, I think this was always the life I was meant for." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You're not just the man on the bench anymore," she whispered. "What am I then?" he asked. She smiled. "You're home." He looked down at her and smiled back. And for the first time in a very long time, he believed it.